I am alive! Alive!
Alive! Alive! Alive!
So yeah, this is Sid Does I Am Alive. History. So, I Am Alive. This game might have the most interesting history of any game I reviewed thus far. The game was first revealed in 2008, I think, with development starting in 2003, but the game was not released until 2012. Woof! What the hell happened? Let's look at the timeline. From 2003 till 2007, the game was under development by Darkworks, a studio I'm quite familiar with seeing as they developed a game I liked back in the day called Cold Fear. Keep in mind, I liked it back in the day. I have not played this game in years, so who knows if I will like it now or not. Anyway, after that, the game was handed to Ubisoft Shanghai, and the game was completed by them and was released in 2012 for the Xbox 360, PS3, and Steam. During the game's development, it got a lot of attention from both people and news outlets for the game's intriguing trailer. The trailer was so well done, it got a lot of people excited for the game. It showcased what was supposed to be a massive open world where resources are scarce and people are out to get each other for just a bottle of water. It got so much attention that its trailer on YouTube passed 3 million views. Sadly, however, the game went through development hell where it switched publishers, developers, and got scrapped, with a studio that ended up getting it having to basically make the game from scratch, which resulted in the game releasing almost 10 years after its initial development had started. That's like Gran Turismo and The Last Guardian numbers. So, after all that time, how did the final product turn out? Well, the game is just like The Last of Us, except it's not as big, doesn't look as good, has less things to do, the controls are stiffer, the story isn't as brilliant, and the soundtrack isn't as touching. So, with that said, does that mean the game is bad? Let's find out. We are never told when the game is actually set, all we know is that an event happened. Don't you just hate that? When games try to hide stuff with using arbitrary words, like the event? It's annoying. In jumps our protagonist, a dude that was visiting someone far away from his wife and daughter, and so when the event happened, all transportation methods were not in operation. Fear not, however, for our protagonist with determination to see his wife and daughter, the dude traveled back to where they are. And it took him almost an entire year, because he traveled on foot, and that's where the game starts. And with the intro covered, let's look at the gameplay mechanics before moving on with the story. So, yeah. You play as, well, the game never really tells us his name, so let's just call him B. Anyway, the gameplay is a lot like how a traditional 3D platformer would, except that the controls are way stiffer than what I would assume most of you are used to, and it did take me a while before I got accustomed to them. And quite frankly, I did not enjoy the first 2 hours of the game because of the controls, but the more I played it, i.e. the more I got used to it, the controls aren't actually that bad and kinda fun. You have plenty to climb, but not as many things to discover as you would think. The world will open up after playing well over half of it, but for the first few hours it's actually quite the linear experience. In fact, even when the world opens up a little, it's not as big as I would have liked it to be. But considering the hell this game went through and the price, I suppose it's not that big of a deal. And now to the climbing mechanics. You have a health meter and a stamina meter. While you're climbing, the stamina meter will obviously start decreasing. It actually decreases a little too fast for my taste considering the stiff controls. But anyway, when the stamina meter is fully depleted, you'll start to lose your overall total stamina. Which I kinda wanna complain about, seeing as I could totally envision a scenario where you don't have enough recovery items and so you'll be stuck in a section, not being able to move, and so your only option is to restart the game from the beginning. But putting that aside, while the mechanic is clunky, if you take your time to explore and stack up on items or pistons, things that will allow you to recharge your stamina meter mid-climb, then you won't run into that problem. Moving on to the combat. Oh boy, where do I start? The game tries to push the survival element pretty hard, but they messed it up so bad that the game became something else that is not necessarily bad. The game tries to present the enemies as these humans with realistic behaviors and reactions, but what they do end up as, a simple enemy with an AI that a first-year programming student can write. Gun down, not afraid. Gun up, afraid. Gun down, not afraid. Gun up. You get the idea. Despite how I put it, I do not find this bad because this changed the gameplay from combat oriented to puzzle solving. What I mean by that, since you can easily figure out the enemy's pattern, you are faced with a scenario where you have to determine the best course of action that will allow you to either keep or increase your bullet count. Because the more bullets you have, the easier the game will be. The less bullets you have, the harder the game will get. Kinda wish that applied to the last section in the game, but I won't spoil it. Among the other weapons you will have is a machete and a bow. Using the machete is as simple as the combat. Press X near an enemy and you will enter the fight animation. Win it and you will kill the enemy. I would also like to know that for some reason there were numerous occasions where the machete simply did not work no matter how many times I pressed the X button. Speaking of the machete, if you shoot down enough enemies, the remaining enemies will get scared and give in. You can then knock them out with the machete, and there are other enemies that won't die immediately after you shoot them. With these enemies, you can either let them die or kill them yourself. I prefer the latter option. There's something about the kill animation that I like. Maybe it's the dead eyes that B has every single kill animation. The last weapon left to discuss is the bow, and the bow is like the gun except it doesn't scare enemies like the gun does, and its ammo is rarer than the gun. But you can pick up the arrows after you use them. As to why the enemies aren't afraid of the bow like the gun, I think it's because they figure that they have enough time to kill you before you fire it. Speaking of the enemies, and this will reflect on what kind of developmental hell this game went through, you will see the same character models often. In fact, most of the women just share this one outfit. Even a plot important female character has the same outfit an NPC wears. Anyway, let's look at the world. I'm actually impressed. As empty and small the world is when it comes to items and exploring, the same can't be said about its characters. The characters, for as static as they are, do have some stories to tell. Like in this segment right here where you find some people eating meat that they offer you. You can of course take it and eat it, but if you head a little to the right, you will discover that the group of people in this section are cannibals. Ew. Exploring ahead, you'll find this woman that will beg you for some food, after saying that she doesn't want to eat that meat anymore or something like that. I thought that she used to eat that meat, but that she is sick of it now, and so as punishment, I did not give her any food. I don't care how hungry I get, I would never eat another human, and that's just a fact, okay? You can take that to the bank. That's a fact that you can take to the bank. Anyway, after playing further in the game, we come back to this exact section, and I actually felt kinda bad for not giving her anything, so I decided to go give her something since I managed to fill up my inventory. But yeah, that happened. There are 20 victims in total that you can help in the game. Some are in your path, some are hidden, which is nice as it gives the game some replayability. I mean, if you choose to play the game selfishly and not help anyone, you'll have more items and thus an easier time beating the game. So you can choose to not give this woman a first aid kit and instead use it on yourself when you need it. So that would mean that there's no reason to help anyone, right? Well, I don't know if there's more than one section like this, but there's this section in the game where you will climb on top of a building, and on your way down, the residents will complain that the elevator is broken, so you could either fix the elevator for them or leave. But here's the thing though, if you fix the elevator, which is not that hard to do, honestly, you will unlock a shortcut to exit the building, but if you don't fix it, you're gonna have to take the long way down. Before we end this discussion on the world of I Am Alive, let's talk about these segments over here and the general art style of the game. A lot of people have complimented the bleak art style of the game. I unfortunately don't feel that way. At some parts I like the art style, but at other parts I don't. This art style attempts to create a world that is isolated and dead. The problem is that the world is already dead with or without the art style, and the game lacks moments like we had in The Last of Us, where Joel and Ellie saw the giraffes. It's honestly a little too bleak for my taste. It gets even worse when the game decides to throw dust in your face. Literally. In the dusty sections, your stamina will slowly decrease over time, and if you run, it will decrease even faster. Which means instead of exploring, you'll be walking a few steps, climbing to get some air, and just repeat this process until you get to where you need to be. Which sounds cool on paper, but was poorly executed. Things get better when you get the gas mask, but there is room for improvement. Speaking about room to improve, I know that I said I got used to the stiff controls, but I do wish they were less stiff. My guess is that the controls were made that way as to prevent players from jumping to their death, seeing as you can't jump wherever you want, but that's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you will not die by accidentally falling off a building, on the other hand, you get the stiff controls. They are really similar to the controls in Enslaved, the only difference being is that the Enslaved controls were a lot smoother. But as I said before, I got used to them, so I guess in the grand scheme of things, I don't really have a problem with the controls. So with the gameplay and the world covered, time to finish up that story. After hitting the new game option and playing for a bit, you will reach B's apartment where he will read that his family has left to a safe place, after which B sets out to figure out where that safe place is. After leaving the apartment, he runs into his daughter? Nah, that's not his daughter. It's a girl that was separated from her mother, and it is now your task to take her back to her safe house. And this is where the story kind of falls flat on its face. There is this segment where you have the girl on your back and she interacts with B, but the interaction is so shallow that it's just a missed opportunity. I mean, I'm not expecting The Last of Us level of script writing, but there should have been more. I mean, adding a few more lines to the script is not demanding as programming a game, I would imagine, but that missed opportunity kinda reflects on the whole game. The game is a jack of all trades, master of none kind of game. They did not even get the save points right. There is no autosave in this game. The game only saves when you enter a loading screen, and sometimes they are close to each other, but other times they are too few and far between, so God help you if you were in a hurry for some reason, because if you turn off the game, you'll have to start from the last loading screen, which could be after you have done about half an hour to an hour worth of gameplay. Speaking about the loading screens, every now and again whenever I would get a loading screen, the game would crash on me. However, the game would always save before crashing, so the crashing is nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Starting with the 7th generation of consoles, I feel that there's a gaming category that has died, and it's that group of games that sits between AAA and plain bad games. You know, those games that weren't well made, but they were still a lot of fun to play? Yeah, those games, and that's where this game fits in. I mean, like nowadays we only have AAA games, indie games, and just plain bad games. We don't have that mid-range average video game, and that's where I Am Alive fits in. The game is not Naughty Dog quality, but it's not bad, it's just average, and I honestly think that's okay. But anyway, after taking the girl to where she needs to be, you do more missions until the game kinda ends, and this is where it gets weird for me. I got into the game and I wanted more. People often compliment the game's ending and I just don't see it. To me, the game ended halfway. Like, I finished the first act and I was expecting a second act, but there isn't a second act. I don't have any objections to the ending, I just expected more. I mean, the ending was so abrupt that even though it was sad, it had no effect on me. But then again, this is a downloadable game that is only $15 and roughly 6 hours long, give or take an hour, so I can't be too judgmental. So, does the game get a thumbs up or a thumbs down? It gets a weird thumbs up. I mean, I had fun with the game, I just don't know if I would recommend it to anyone, so if you are interested in the game, I would wait for a price drop. But on the other hand, if you have nothing else to do, then I would pick it up. I mean, you might be surprised, but that is a cautious recommendation. So with that being said, I'll see you guys next week when I review Deadlight. I have no idea why I put my hand up, anyways, I'll put it down. Deadlight, yes, another depressingly dark game. But I promise to end this Dark Age marathon with a game that actually has a happy ending before I move on to happier games. So with that being said, for those of you who are watching, wherever you may be in this world, thank you for watching and stay alive until the next video. I'm gonna go sleep because it's almost midnight.